My name is Tricia Dykers Koenig. Everybody calls me Tricia or Trish. For the last 15 years, I have worked as the national organizer for the Covenant Network of Presbyterians. The Covenant Network was founded in 1997 to try to change the Presbyterian Church's policies on ordination for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. I had been involved in previous organizations before the Covenant Network existed. The beginning of my feeling called to ministry in this particular area predates my Covenant Network work by almost a decade. I was a commissioner to the General Assembly in 1991 for my presbytery, and the big issue on the agenda of the 1991 General Assembly was a report called Keeping Body and Soul Together, Sexuality, Spirituality, and Social Justice. It was a comprehensive look at human sexuality in a theological perspective. There were sections on sexuality, on marriage, on sexuality for youth, disabled people. It was very comprehensive. But it was clear in the run-up to the General Assembly that the controversy was about homosexuality. And I had read it, and I thought, well, it makes sense to me. We had a couple of listening nights because this report was so controversial. And I thought, well, I don't go as a commissioner instructed by the presbytery how to vote. But I do want to listen to what the presbytery folks are saying before I go. It seems like that'd be a responsible action for a commissioner to take. So I went to both of the listening nights. And that experience, I don't know about radicalized, but it really got me going, because the language that some people were using to talk about gay and lesbian people, it was terrible language. It was in no way consistent with my understanding of Jesus Christ. So after that experience, I decided that I needed to educate myself about the issues around homosexuality. So I did some reading. I had only basically read the report that was coming to the General Assembly before going to GA. Afterwards, I read previous things that had been written by the Presbyterian Church on homosexuality, went to the library and checked out books just on homosexuality in general so I could learn a little bit about gay culture. And I like to tell this story on myself. I had to think about whether I was willing to check them out. Maybe somebody would think I was a lesbian if I checked out these books. And then I thought, well, you know what? That's really stupid. So I did check them out. But it was an example of the homophobia that I was swimming in, even as I was appalled by it. At the same time, the congregation that my husband and I were serving is a fantastic church. And if the General Assembly said, hey, you should study this topic, then they did. So I developed a 12-week adult education series that studied the report. Only 2 of the weeks that we had out of the 12 had anything to do with homosexuality because we were studying the whole report. So we had about a dozen people who met outside the class a week or 2 later to say, well, what would it mean to follow up on homosexuality? And one of the middle-aged women said, well, why don't we look into becoming a more light church? And I gulped a little bit because at the time it was considered something of a risky thing to do that. But I thought, okay, why don't we? Our session voted to become a more light church in 1994. After the 96 Assembly, when the famous Amendment B was passed by the Assembly and then was ratified by the Presbyteries and became the paragraph G60106B in the Book of Order that was intended to exclude LGBT people from ordination. In 1997, Tim Hart Anderson and Pam Byers came to the Assembly to try to fix that. And they took an overture that was not designed to do anything really helpful and amended that overture to amend G60106B, which had just been put in the book, so that it would be not as horrendous and it would not have the prohibition on ordination. And that passed the assembly. So the Covenant Network came into being to try to help pass that amendment. It's called Amendment A at the 1997 GA. At that time, then, I joined the Board of Presbyterians for Lesbian and Gay Concerns. The Covenant Network was coming at it from a different perspective, but with the same goal. And so I worked together with Pam and Tim and others on the Covenant Network Board to try to get 97A passed. But in the year 2000, Ham Byers, who was our founding executive director, and Tim Hart Anderson, who was one of the people who was instrumental in starting the Covenant Network, as a pastor in San Francisco at that time, invited me to come on the staff in a new position that they created. I don't know that they created it for me, but they created it and offered it to me. The General Assembly voted to amend G60106B in 1997, in 2001, in 2008. In all of those years, we were not successful getting it through the presbyteries. But 2008 momentum was behind us, and we came a lot closer than we had before. And so in 2010, that amendment was ratified by the presbyteries. And I'm kind of honored to have had a part in drafting what is now G20104B in the Book of Order. But my conviction is the gospel is inevitable. There is no way that the church is going to persist in excluding people whom God has included forever. And I just think it's a tragedy that the church should split now over an issue that we're going to all be on the same page about before too long. I am as confident as I possibly could be that eventually we are all going to agree that you can't treat lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people as less than human and be a Christian.